Continuing on with this mini-series of previewing some teams that I find pretty interesting heading into the NFL season this year, I wanted to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. Last year, the Raiders finished with an 8-8 record, and that was good for second in the division behind the hated division rivals in the Kansas City Chiefs. And last year, the Raiders actually almost made the playoffs, but they had a late season collapse that caused them to miss the playoffs yet again. And as you guys can tell from the title, I feel like the Raiders are being kind of underrated heading into this season, so let's just talk about them in today's video. Before we do get started though, I do want to say, make sure to go ahead and check out my podcast if you guys haven't already. The link to it will be in the description below. I'm going to be uploading there like weekly, so if you guys want to get more content from me, go ahead and check it out. Link to it is in the description below, as I said before. But without further ado, let's get this video started. And let's start out by talking about the Raiders offense. The Raiders offense should not be an issue at all. Vegas's offense last year was really good and was definitely the biggest reason for them winning 8 games. Derek Carr is a borderline Pro Bowl level quarterback, and he does have his struggles at times when it comes to being passive, and he definitely has his struggles when it comes to just not being a good quarterback and all. But he's still a pretty good player. He's not elite, but he's still a serviceable option under center. And as I said before, Derek Carr, I mean, he's just a pretty good player. Not much else I really have to say for him besides he's pretty good, not that bad. The run game is going to be really good. You got Josh Jacobs already. He was one of the best running backs in the NFL. He's arguably a top 10 running back in the league right now. And if you think that, I can't blame you at all. I'm sure many Raiders fans watching this video right now think he's top 10. And if you think that, as I said before, I can't blame you. Personally, he's like right outside my top 10. But we're not going to get into that. Point is, Josh Jacobs is a really good player, and he's going to be a really good option in the backfield for Derek Carr to hand it off to. And along with that, they did pick up Kenyon Drake in the offseason. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of this move, but Kenyon Drake, he's still a pretty decent player. He is going to be a fantastic number 2 running back next to Josh Jacobs. Last year in Arizona, he was sort of disappointing. A lot of people expected him to have a much better season than he had in real life, and he does have his consistency issues as a number 1 running back, but as a number 2 running back, I think he's going to be one of the best in the league. Kenyon Drake, he is going to be one of the best number 2 running backs in the NFL, as I said before, and that's going to help take off the pressure off Josh Jacobs. So Josh Jacobs, he can stay fresh, and I mean, he can, be a good player, and you won't have to worry about injuries as much because you have Kenyon Drake, kind of just, supporting him, so he won't have to take on as much of a load. And overall, I really do like this run game. Then there's the receiving core, and it's okay. Not exactly the worst in the world or anything like that, but it's not elite like the Cowboys or the Buccaneers or the Chiefs or the Bengals or the Broncos or someone like that, but it's still a pretty decent receiving core. Now, Henry Ruggs, last year, he was disappointing. I will admit that, but I do think he will improve in year 2, and he could definitely have over 900 yards and 5 touchdowns in this upcoming NFL season. And hey, sometimes you do have to give rookies time, so maybe just need some time. Henry Ruggs, he's not that bad of a player, and I definitely think he can make a pretty big jump in year 2. Then there's Hunter Renfro, and Hunter Renfro, he's not that bad at all. I mean, he's not exactly elite like a Tyler Boyd. Well, he's not elite either, but he's still pretty good. Point is, Hunter Renfro, he is still a pretty good slot receiver, and he's good at moving the chains, and I mean, his nickname is Third Down Renfro, if I'm not wrong. Hunter Renfro, he's a pretty good player, and I definitely think he could have a career season in 2021, given the fact that Nelson Aguilar left the team, so he might have a much bigger role in this offense. And I mean, Hunter Renfro, he's a pretty solid player. And then there's the addition of John Brown, and I gotta say, I love that addition. John Brown is going to be a good locker room presence, and along with that, he can produce on the field. He does fit their system of, passing it downfield. He's a pretty fast guy, and John Brown, overall, he's a really good player. Now, last season, he did deal with some injuries, but when he's on the field, John Brown is one of the best deep threats in the NFL, and he is a really good player. And then there's the tight end position, and they have Darren Waller, who, for the record, he is really, 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 really good, and he might be elite. And if you think he's elite, I can't completely blame you. Darren Waller is one of the best receiving tight ends in the NFL, and his blocking isn't the worst at all. And point is, Darren Waller, he's an awesome tight end, and he is going to be Derek Carr's number 1 option when it comes to, passing the ball, and he's definitely going to be his number 1 receiving option. And point is, Darren Waller, he is a fantastic player. But I do also want to talk about Jon Gruden, because Jon Gruden, I gotta say, he's not the worst coach in the NFL, but I do feel like he is kind of overrated. Like, when it comes to his offensive systems, part of the reason why I feel like Henry Ruggs had a disappointing rookie year is also because Jon Gruden has to do a better job of using wide receivers more in his offense. I think that was a big reason why Henry Ruggs had a disappointing season, as I said before. But I do have to say, I mean, I'm not totally concerned about the offense. It should be pretty good. I definitely would like to see, Jon Gruden, modernize a little bit more and allow, use more receivers more in his offense. So that's something I'd like to see. But then again, the Raiders offense, I mean, as I said before, it should be pretty good. Now, the offensive line, I mean, I have some concerns, but if Alex Leatherwood can have a decent season, then the offensive line should be okay. Don't think it will be as good as it was, last year, but the offensive line, I guess, I mean, it should be okay. But now, let's talk about Vegas's defense, and I've made this clear many times, and I'm sure if you're a Vegas fan, you know this. Vegas's defense was awful last season, and it was a massive reason why the Las Vegas collapsed in 2020. Now, they did make some pretty nice additions, I do have to say that. The front seven is actually not terrible, and after free agency and the draft, the front seven might be one of the better units in the NFL. Max Crosby, he is one of the best young edge rushers in the NFL, and last year he had like a sort of a down year. It wasn't exactly the worst season out there. He had 7 sacks compared to 10, but at the same time, he was dealing with injuries, and if he can be healthy next season, he should take another leap in his play. And point is, he's pretty good. And along with that, they did sign Yannick Ngakoue in free agency, and Yannick Ngakoue, he was not exactly very good, but at the same time, he was traded twice last season, so it was probably difficult having to learn both systems in Minnesota and Baltimore, and I mean, with all the virus stuff and all, it was probably even harder. But Yannick Ngakoue, when he's at his best, he is one of the best edge rushers in the NFL, and he's going to be a massive help to Max Crosby. And hey, Max Crosby, I mean, he might be, I don't know who's going to be the number one pass rushing guy. I'm guessing it's maybe Yannick Ngakoue, but I mean, point is, both of them are really good players, and he is going to be a massive help to his defense. And I think we all know how good Yannick Ngakoue is when healthy. Enough about him. They also do have Clelin Ferrell, and he definitely has not lived up to the expectations of being a top 5 pick, and I'm sure the Raiders would have taken someone else if they got the chance to do a redraft of the 2019 NFL draft. But Clelin Ferrell, he is still a pretty decent player, and he's a pretty good run stopper. Now, he does need to improve his pass rushing ability, and I don't know how many reps he will get at the edge position, given the fact that they have Max Crosby and Yannick Ngakoue, who form one of the best edge rushing tandems in the league, but maybe he does play at interior defensive tackle, given the fact that, he's a pretty big guy, and along with that, he can stop the run, as I said before, so maybe that does happen. Personally, I wouldn't hate that at all. I think that would be pretty cool. And speaking of defensive tackles, they also did sign Solomon Thomas, who maybe has a career revival in Vegas. Maybe he does. Solomon Thomas wasn't bad in San Francisco, but he wasn't exactly amazing, but maybe it happens in Las Vegas, as I said before. The linebackers on the roster also are not that bad. Nick Morrow, he had a career season last year, and he was one of the few bright spots on a pretty bad defense last year, and it would be awesome if he continues to progress and play well. Now, Corey Littleton last year had a massive down season. He went from one of the top coverage linebackers in the league to being a liability. However, I do think coaching was a big part of his struggles, and we're going to be talking about that later, and I do believe he can definitely pick up his play and return to his old self. Las Vegas also did draft Divine Diablo in the draft this past season, and they did convert him to a linebacker, and a lot of people are high on him, so if he pans out, that would be a scary linebacking core. And the secondary, it's not elite, and last year it was really bad. But then again, they did make some nice additions. They already had a pretty decent piece in Trayvon Mullen, who he does have his consistency issues, but let's be honest, he is definitely the best cornerback. He was definitely the best cornerback on that roster last season, and Trayvon Mullen is definitely not a bad player at all. They did add Casey Hayward to their team, and Casey Hayward, he is getting up there in age, and he definitely has lost a step compared to what he once was, but he's still a serviceable player, and I definitely think he can be a good veteran presence for guys like Trayvon Mullen and Damon Arnett. And the Raiders have a really nice group of safeties. Jonathan Abram, he has not had a very good start to his career, but if he can stay healthy, I mean, I definitely think he can become a pretty good player. And I mean, keep in mind, he is young, so he still does have time. And they also did draft Tyree Gillespie and Trayvon Mullen in this past year's draft, and both of them were some of the best safeties in this draft class. So if they can have good seasons, that's gonna go a long way in helping out this team. And I gotta say, if the secondary is definitely gonna be helped out by the front seven, because if that pass rush is really good, the secondary won't have as much stress since they won't have to cover as long. And another big thing about the defense, as I alluded to earlier, is having a new defensive coordinator in Gus Bradley, who I think is going to be a lot better than their old guy. When Paul Gunther, I don't know how to say his name, their old defensive coordinator, was fired, guys like Corey Littleton did see improvement towards the end of the season. I do think Gus Bradley will be a lot better than this Paul Gunther guy. I don't know how to say his name, alright? And I do think coaching is going to be a massive difference, make a massive difference for this unit, because coaching in the NFL can make a massive difference, as I said before. I think Gus Bradley, he's going to be a big boost to this defense, and I mean, anything, it could probably be an improvement from their old defensive coordinator, but the Raiders defense, I definitely think it should improve, and that does bring up the question, are the Raiders underrated? Personally, I actually do have to say Las Vegas is being underrated. Ever since the offseason, I feel like a lot of people, who I've seen people do power rankings and predictions and stuff like that, and I've seen a lot of people say Las Vegas is going to win something like 5 games, and I've seen people put Las Vegas in the mid to low 20s in power rankings, and I gotta say, the Raiders, I don't think they are that bad, alright? The Raiders are gonna win more than 5 games for sure, and at the very least, will be an okay team. I know we've said this about the Raiders in the past, and they have disappointed us. Don't get me wrong, and I'm sure Raiders fans know that a lot, but the Raiders, don't get this twisted. They are still a really decent team. They still got a pretty good offense. Now, the offensive line is a question, but the offense is still really good, and I definitely think it will be good again in 2021. And I feel like a lot of people are overlooking the additions they made on defense and the pieces on the offensive line. And if the offensive line can just be average, and if the defensive additions can, make a real difference, then the Raiders should be a pretty decent team. Now, are they guaranteed a playoff spot? No, they are not guaranteed a playoff spot, especially when you consider the fact that they play in a division with the Kansas City Chiefs. However, I definitely think next year can finally be Las Vegas's year if the defensive additions do, make real differences, if the coaching is much better, and if the offensive line can at least be decent. I think this Raiders team should win at least 6 or 7 games and could win as many as 11, maybe a little bit more. All I can say is that I'm pretty excited to see Las Vegas this year, and maybe this is finally the year, and I gotta say, hopefully it is, because the Raiders, I mean, they've been kind of irrelevant since 2003, but with that being said, that's going to be the end of today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. It truly does mean a lot to me. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button as it really helps out the channel. And also make sure to subscribe if you guys are new and enjoy this type of content so you don't miss out on any new videos like this. Plus, we're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And once we hit our goal, I am finally going to do a face reveal. But without further ado, I'm out, you guys.